Welcome to Spare Room Studio, a place to create and relax. Hello and welcome back to Spare Room Studio. Today I'm going to continue working on this page that I have started off camera. It is from the book Symphony of Cute Animals by Kanoko Egusa. Now, if you are on Instagram, you may have seen me post recently a few images that I've coloured with Crayola pencils, and I had somebody say, how did I blend the Crayola pencils like that? So I'm going to show you my method of working in this book, and one of the other pages that I posted is this one here. This one was already done, and I did this one for Easter this year. So you can see that I get quite a saturated, deep, vibrant look with the Crayola pencils, and that is mostly from layering, just layering and layering and layering. And sometimes I use a bit of solvent as well. So I thought that I would show you this page that I'm working on now and have a bit of a colour and chat. And I may not finish it, we'll see how I go. But there is a tiny little bit of bleed through here and on the cat that I had from this page. I think I used Derwent Inktense here and then pencil over the top. So tiny bit of bleed through, but that's okay. I can work with that. That's no problem. I'm just going to put a piece of paper here to protect this page. And most people would be aware of Crayola pencils, but there may be some of you that aren't. So I am using the very basic Crayola pencils that you may buy for your child or grandchildren, or you've used at school. Very, very basic pencils. And I use the 100 set. So this is my backup set that I've just bought recently. In my pencil case here, I also have the Crayola Colours of the World, which is the portrait set, the portrait colours. And I find them to be really useful neutral colours to use other things other than portraits. And I think there's a couple of neon pencils that I had in a small set that I picked up somewhere. There is also a range of colours that I picked up at one time that are branded Colours of Kindness. See if I can get that to focus on there for you. Colours of Kindness. But I believe that these colours are in the 100 set anyway. Let me just have a quick look and check if I'm right there. So yes, this colour that I just picked out was called Mauvelous, and that is there. So it's sometimes they put these special branded sets out, and they're basically just colours that are in the standard range anyway, but rebranded for some reason. So I have them in this pencil case. And I know some people might think that's a bit of overkill for a cheap set of pencils like Crayola to go in a nice case. But I actually really like my Crayola pencils. I enjoy using them a lot. So it's worth it to me to put them in the case. And I'm just going to get a couple of pencils out and start colouring. Medium deep rose and light medium rose. So these are both Colours of the World pencils. And I'm just going to do this little bit of blossom here. So take a deep breath, slow down a little bit. I've been racing around, so I need to calm down a little bit. I thought I'd do it just like a very low-key colour and chat for you because, you know, I quite often get the same response when I post pages that I've coloured with Crayola. People are a little bit sort of disbelieving or incredulous that I get the depth of colour and the saturation and so on that I do out of Crayola pencils. And it's quite simple really with the Crayola, is that they're very, very hard, very, very hard pencil, and it requires a lot of layers to develop that depth of colour. And some people just don't want to work that hard at getting the colour out, which is fair enough. Or you may have hand or wrist pain that makes it very difficult to work for long periods of time, and that's understandable too. So I fully understand that there are reasons why people don't like working with the Crayola. However, if you are on a limited budget, you know, you're being careful with your money or whatever, and you feel like you have to have expensive pencils to get good results, no you don't. You can get a result out of these, but you just need to put a little bit of extra time and maybe a little bit of extra effort into getting the colour out of them. Now this one is light medium rose, and it is a pale colour. It might not even be showing up on the camera very much, but it is a very light colour to start with. But this is exactly how Crayola work. You need to build the colour up with lots of light layers. The moment you press hard on a Crayola, the moment is you're lost really, because what I found with them is you need to work over several layers quite lightly with them, and then you get to a point where you can press a bit harder, really burnish it and press hard with your pencil, and then that's it. There's no more that the paper can take with the Crayola pencil. So they're very, very hard and waxy. They get shiny, and it gets to the point where you just cannot layer any more on top of there. So the first couple of layers can look very pale like this is, but you can also then start to bring in the darker colours to deepen it up. So that's a very, very light pink. And then, for example, I might decide to bring in something like this one, which is called Tickle Me Pink. Now I'm just going to sharpen this using a battery operated sharpener, so I'll try not to do it too close to the camera so it's so loud, but I find this one works particularly well for sharpening my pencils. So quite often I will sharpen them to quite a fine point to work with. And another sharpener that I've got that I find works really well with these Crayolas, because not only are they hard with the lead, they're very hard wood on some of them as well. So I find this Derwent manual sharpener works very well, and I have another one which is very similar, a crankshaft sharpener, and they work very well with the harder pencils as well. The only trouble I find with this one, with the Derwent one, is that this little contraption at the top here opens the teeth that grips the pencil, and you may be able to see that, hopefully you can see, that it does damage the barrel of the pencil a bit. But because these pencils are so cheap and so readily available, I don't get too hung up about that bit of damage. It doesn't bother me too much. So that point can break very easily if you put a lot of pressure on it. Even though they're a hard pencil, having such a fine point does open you up to breaking it very easily. So then again, not applying too much pressure on my strokes, I just start to build up the colour. And I'll keep going and going and going at that until I get the depth of colour I want, or I just can't layer any more to it. And I'm not pressing hard at the moment, so it's not really... If I remind myself to work lightly and I don't press too hard, it doesn't fatigue my hand too greatly working with them. But once I start to get in there and really, you know, try and burnish it and press really hard, yes, it can fatigue the hands very easily. So what I would say about them is that you need to have a degree of patience to build the colour up. But if you're on a budget and you want a good result, you can achieve it with that bit of patience. You will be able to build up the colour. So hopefully that's starting to show on there already. So this one, this colour here is called Tickle Me Pink. So I thought I'd just do a little bit of a colour and chat, get you guys up to speed with what I've been doing, why I haven't been around quite so much this week, and show you what I'm doing in this book, because I've been really enjoying colouring in this book. And I know it's hard to believe, but I do actually enjoy working with these Crayola pencils an awful lot. So I've been really busy. We've had, I think I mentioned on another video, but if you haven't seen it, we've had a gas leak at our house. So our gas meter is out by the side of our driveway, and the pipes appear to go underground from the meter. They go underground. And we live in an old house. It's 100 years old at the front part of the house. And then the previous owners built a rather large extension onto the back of the house. We think about 20 years ago, maybe, around that sort of time period. So we don't have a big history of the house itself. You know, no paperwork really was left for us. There's certainly no working drawings or anything like that. We didn't, you know, we just don't know how they went about doing things when they built the extension onto the house. So the gas plumber came out, and we had to find a gas plumber and pay for all the repairs, because the gas leak was actually on our side of the meter. So the supply comes into the meter and back out to your house for your usage, and that's the side obviously that the leak was on. So it becomes the homeowner's responsibility to fix the leak, and you have to pay for that repair work. So it ended up being a rather expensive experience. So with this lighter colour now, what I'm doing over this darker pink with the lighter pink is I'm effectively burnishing it together, and that's how you can get a bit of a smoother transition of a blend there. Here I'm just working it lightly going up. Here I've done the light work, but then with the lighter pink I'm coming back and I'm actually pressing harder, and I'm burnishing those two colours together. And all those little bits of white paper that you can see in between the pencil strokes is being filled in by burnishing it that way. So the plumber had a lot of trouble finding where the gas pipes went once they left the meter. They appeared to go underground and then under concrete. And so to make sure that everything was fixed and working correctly meant that if he wanted to pursue the pipes that were already there, that it would mean cutting up and digging up concrete, and the carport has actually got quarry tiles on over the top of the concrete, and it was going to be quite an exercise and quite expensive to do it that way. So he wanted to put new pipes in and go through the roof. And so if anything was to happen again, the next gas plumber will see all that pipe up there in the roof and be able to fix it really easy. So we agreed to go that way. And also we had a very old hot water heater that was gas, and how it's survived as long as it has is absolutely amazing. And we were already looking at maybe upgrading it, because it's quite inefficient when you have an old appliance like that. So we had already been considering doing that, and we decided to upgrade that at the same time as all the work was going on. So it was quite a big job, but it was made a bit harder because the plumber had to split the job over a couple of days. I'm just going to get a slightly darker pink now, magenta, just to darken up a little bit on the very inner bit of this flower. So he had to sort of split it up over a couple of days, because the electrician that he works with wasn't available to put a new plug in, and various things happened, so it did drag out. And of course, when the tradies were here, it was extremely noisy, lots of drilling, banging, noise going on, and it was a bit of upheaval to the daily routine, so it made it really hard to do any videos. I made a couple over that period of time, but then I had to do voiceovers for them later, because the background noise was just too much. So just having a look here where things are going. Yeah, it was quite a stressful time. So there was that, and also my husband was on annual leave last week, so I was doing things with him as well, in between everything that was going on, and it was just a bit of upheaval. Okay, this one here is called Granny Smith Apple. I'm just going to do the centre of the blossom there with green. And then I've got, this is bronze yellow, and I'm just going to lightly add some colour to the, I don't know what they're called. Is it stamens? The part that comes out the centre of the flower there? I'm not sure, but that's what I'm colouring with the bronze yellow. And I'm going to put a bit of that bronze yellow along the edges of the flower, leaves, not flowers. I sometimes like to do that when you've got leaves. I use, a lot of green, but then I bring in something like a tan or a mustard, sometimes even a little touch of red, depending on what type of flower it is. And just put a little tiny bit of colour along some of the edges, because leaves are not all completely green. Sometimes they have those little burnt, edges or old edges along there that are a bit discoloured or whatever. Now we've got roses here, so with the roses I do like to sometimes bring in a touch of red, because if you've ever looked at roses carefully, the leaves, sometimes they have a little touch of red on their leaves. And this one is lime green now. I'm just going to bring a bit of lighter green to burnish that all together. So, and we might do that on here as well in places, not everywhere. I try not to treat all leaves exactly the same, because if they're all carbon copies of each other, it looks very unnatural. So sometimes I like to leave a little bit of white showing as well. I'll go back to this colour because I forgot to do some of that over here. Okay, and what I was thinking about doing with the background is I don't know why, I've got it in my head that I want to use a bit of brown with all the blues and the pinks. So I'm just going to show you how I'd maybe get started with some of that. So I like antique brass. That's the colour I like to use quite a bit. And I like the almond range of the colours of the world as well. So I'm just going to do a little bit of not a lot of difference there, but I think I'll start with the antique brass. And it might seem a bit of an odd colour choice, but I don't know, I just felt like doing that. So what I might do is I might do alternating stripes of this colour and a slightly lighter colour maybe, and make it look like a striped wallpaper. And I won't do the whole lot because it will take forever to show you the whole lot, but it'll give you an idea of how I go about starting off the colour and building it up. Now this pencil does have a long point, but the actual point of it has worn down and gone a little bit blunt, so it feels quite soft. It's not digging into the paper. When you have a really sharp point, sometimes it digs in and catches and actually can tear the paper, so you just need to be a bit, you know, wary of how you apply pressure when you've got a really sharp point. Let's just do a couple to start with, and it just gives you an idea how I would start building it up. So again, maybe a little tiny bit harder this time in the pressure, a little bit heavier, but I'm certainly not pressing hard. So you see how that colour is starting to build up already. And there's no magic method of, you know, how to do the strokes or what direction to do the strokes or anything with something like this. I go this way, that way. I might do circles, might do longer strokes. As long as it's light, you're not burnishing and pressing too hard that you're filling the tooth of the paper completely just yet, you can get away with it. You can blend it up. Now I just went over the line there a little bit, but that can be erased with an eraser as well, because I haven't pressed too hard just yet. So I might get to that point, and then I'm going to bring in the deep almond now, just for a little bit of a shadow, a little bit darker. Now what I've found with the Crayola pencils too is that some colours have a slightly softer lead than others, and therefore they are easier to work with. And there doesn't seem to be any real logic to what colours are, you know, harder or, yeah, harder to work with than others. There probably is a technical reason why, but I don't know it. But at the price point that these are at, you know, that's a small thing to put up with, I think, when you think about what you're paying for them. So I'm going to go back to the antique brass now and just blend that back in. And I will repeat this process over and over and over until I feel like I've got the colour where I want it to be. Now sometimes I want it to be really heavily burnished, like I've done in the sky there, and other times I'm happy to leave a little bit of texture showing. It depends what it is that I'm colouring. With skies, I quite often like to try and burnish it to the point where there's no white showing and the colour is very even. Now I don't want to talk about politics as such, but recent events that are happening around the world are going to make it harder and harder at the moment for people to have the spare cash for spending on their supplies and so on. So it is a good time to think about what have you already got stashed away in your supplies and how can you make them work for you better. And of course Crayola pencils and Crayola super tips are very, very budget friendly, and I feel like they're quite versatile. You know, you can use them in some different ways, get different looks. Your super tips can almost become like a watercolour. And that's how I keep just going back and forward, building up that colour. And I might get to that sort of point and then think, okay, I'm going to bring in a little bit darker again. So I'm going to look for a slightly darker colour in the almond range. So I will call that, this is very deep almond. So if I want to try and make it look like there's a bit of a shadow, I'm still able to bring a deeper colour in at this stage. I haven't filled the tooth of the paper or burnished it so heavily that it won't accept any more yet. Now I do have a Prismacolor colourless blender here. I don't usually use this with the Crayola, but I just thought I'd see what sort of effect it has, because quite often with a waxy pencil, the Crayola, the Prismacolor colourless blender, what it feels like it does, I'm just going to get a brush and brush away those little pencil crumbs. What it feels like it does is displace that top layer of wax, and then it can actually sometimes make it look a bit lighter. And if there's any tooth left to the paper, working with this colourless blender quite often will push that colour into those gaps that are left in the tooth, and then it becomes quite hard to work with a darker pencil after that. It is taking a little bit more, but not a great deal. But as I say, I don't often use that colourless blender or anything like that with the Crayola pencils. What I will use sometimes is an old marker that has dried out. I have the low toxic solvent that I use with a old marker, and then I'll blend that out with that. I'll just see if I've got... I like to clean off the nib, because sometimes the last time I've used it, so this would have been like a blue maybe that I used it, or a green last time, it's still sitting there on that, and a little bit of red by the look of it. So I like to just clean that off before I use it, because otherwise I transfer colour over onto the new picture. With that solvent, so Gamsol or Zesta, whatever you have in your part of the world that's the equivalent. Sometimes I will use that. It helps to smooth out all of those streaky lines where I haven't necessarily blended it too well. and that can speed up the process a lot. If you are sensitive to solvents though, this may not be ideal for you. And I don't use it every time, like on every picture that I use with Crayolas, but every now and again I feel like I just want to speed the process up a lot. I'll do that. Otherwise I just keep working away with the pencil. It all depends on what mood I'm in at that given time. Because sometimes when I'm sitting in front of the TV or I'm listening to an audio book or a podcast or something, I'm quite happy to sit here and layer away while I'm listening to something. And that's how I do it. And I just keep going and going and going. So there will be some days where I know I haven't got the patience or wherewithal to sit here and layer like this. I don't pick up Crayola pencils. And then for the in-between colour, there is one that I like. I think this is it here. It's called Oatmeal. And I quite like that colour. And I might do that in between. It's a very pale colour. Well, as it's named, it is like an oatmeal colour. And that one is a little bit scratchy there, so it has indented the paper a little bit, but and that's how I keep building up the colour with the lighter colour. Yeah, that one's got a little scratchy sharp point on it. Which has actually scratched the paper. Let's see whether... It does help blend it out a little bit. And then I let that dry and then go back over it again. So let me just sharpen my pencil. And see whether it's just something that's in the lead. And when I build up, sometimes I like to do the method of going in opposite directions to build it up. So, you know, I go vertical and then across. Then I might go diagonally and the other diagonal and keep building it up. And that isn't actually hiding that bleed through all that well, but again, I can live with that. So let's see if that just takes those pencil strokes out. So last weekend I actually went and viewed an exhibition with my husband. We went to see an exhibition about the Galloway hoard, and it's a Viking hoard that they found in Scotland containing gold and silver, and it was really interesting. The exhibition explained how they did all the investigations to work out how old the silver is and where it originated from, and learn everything they could from the items themselves. And of course the silver work was really amazing, but hidden underneath a decoy layer at the top was a pot or vessel containing some gold items, and the gold was just absolutely beautiful. The colour of it was so rich and intense, and my husband and I quite enjoy watching documentaries and things like that. We've watched Time Team in the past, where they've done archaeological digs and the things that they find and so on, and we enjoy that sort of thing. And when I saw this exhibition advertised, I thought it would be an interesting thing that we would both get something out of, viewing. So that was really interesting and enjoyed it. And then afterwards I went into the art gallery, which is next to the museum, where the Galloway hoard exhibition is in the museum. And our art gallery has had an exhibition that is coming to a close, and it's all about the Renaissance. And so the paintings and so on were mostly from the collection here in Adelaide for the South Australian Art Gallery. But I think there was a few pieces that they had been loaned for the exhibition. So there was lots of paintings to look at, sculpture, and also some printing and etchings. So Albrecht Dürer, as you know, we have Albrecht Dürer watercolour pencils, and Albrecht Dürer, his etching work is just amazing to have a look at the fine detail and the drawing skills and so on. So I really enjoyed that, and that was quite unexpected because I didn't know that that was on. And I think it's actually going to close this weekend that's coming, so I was pretty lucky to just happen to go when the exhibition was, open. So I find the paintings of the Renaissance time to be fascinating, how quickly the technical brilliance of the artists changed from being quite naive to highly detailed was in a very short period of time, really. And the fact that they did everything they painted was from observation. They didn't have cameras that they could take a picture of and refer to. Just trying to line this up as best I can. They didn't have anything to rely on other than their sketches and their observation of the subject. So I find that side of things to be fascinating. Now I'm pretty sure that there would be a line going there in that wallpaper. And one of the things that struck me with the paintings also was that when you think about the age of these paintings, the fact that some of the colours are still very vibrant And I know that they do a lot of conservation and restorative work to paintings and so on, but the fact of the colours being what they were is still amazing to me. And to get up close and have a look at all those details with the brush strokes. You know, they were painting the lace and the jewellery and so on with such fine precision. It's mind-boggling, really. So there you go. That gives you an idea of how I'm going to go about doing the wallpaper. So there is that. And then the wallpaper itself, the flowers on there, I think I might keep them like a deepish pinkish red. So not too dissimilar to that, but maybe, I think it's raspberry maybe, the colour is. Yep, so we'll use raspberry, and that one's quite nice, jazzberry jam, because this one here is magenta. So I'm just going to sharpen this one. So this is jazzberry jam, and I'll start lightly with the first layer. And remember, with the harder pencils sometimes too, you don't necessarily need to use white for a highlight. What you can do is feather the colour out and maybe use a very narrow border of white on the edges for the highlights. So if you don't manage to do that, you can always use, you know, something like a Prismacolor white to come back in and lighten off some of those edges. But if you can preserve the white of the paper, that's even better still, I think. So where the petals overlap, you need a bit of a darker colour, and then lighter to the edge, so that that highlight against the darker bit behind makes sense for layering all those petals. And then you can use that slightly darker colour, this is the raspberry, and then you can use the slightly darker colour again at the part where the petals overlay. You've got that white bit of highlight and then the black line, and then so just on the other side of the black line you use your deeper darker colour and blend that back out, and you start to get that sense of the petals being layered. So wherever something overlaps, you need a darker bit underneath and a lighter bit on the top. Now these are quite small. If this was a big rose, it would give me much more scope for building up the layers and the intensity, but this is quite small. So you don't really have to go too fussy with these smaller things, because it becomes hard to read what's going on. So you can work at it two ways. I did the lighter colour first. Here I'm doing the darker colour first, and then feathering the lighter bit towards the outer edge of the petal. So you can do that way, or you can do the lighter colour and then gradually deepen it up with the darker colour. So as with anything, I always say to you, please experiment. There are more than one way to do things, and each method has its pros and its cons, and there will be something that appeals to you more about one way than the other, just as it does for me, or indeed you just go with whatever you've got in your hand at the time and adjust your working method to what you've got in your hand. I do tend to change things up all the time myself. And I think that all comes down to mood for me. Sometimes I'm able to concentrate and do quite detailed stuff very easily, and I can work at things for hours and it doesn't fatigue me in any way, and I just feel quite a sense of satisfaction from it working that way. And there are other days where I just can't even comprehend putting that much effort into it. I want a quick and easy result, and that's usually when I'll reach for a marker or something, or base a page first rather than coloured pencil. But there are other times where I've got no end of I hope you've been on camera that while I've been doing that and you haven't missed all of that. Yeah, there are times where coloured pencil is just beyond me. So, just in case you weren't on there, I'm going to do this one down here. So, I'm going to start with the lighter colour first. Blend out to the outer edges of the petals. And trying to preserve a little bit of white on the edges. Now don't forget, if you don't preserve the white of the edges, if the white pencil doesn't work for you, then try an acrylic paint pen or a Sakura jelly roll in white. Whatever you've got to hand, that's what you can then start trying to create a highlight with. But if you can try and preserve a little bit of the white of the paper, it's always going to be easier to do that. And just gently feathering that out towards the edge of the petal. So that's how I would approach doing the roses. And again, just keep building up the colours, you know, bit by bit. Now to do a petal, a leaf, I'm going to use jade green. And I'm just going to use that lightly over the whole leaf and leave a little bit of white at the edges. And then I'm going to get, this is a very tiny now, olive. And with the olive, I'm going to just do a little bit darker where the centre of the leaf is, where the vein goes down the centre. And then the ones that go off to the edges, just a little bit of darker colour along there. And then with the jade green, go back and blend that back in. And again, leaving the edges of the leaf lighter to give me options for either bringing in a little bit of colour like I did up there, or just leaving it lighter, because don't forget this is a wallpaper. It's not actually real roses. So this sort of thing you can make as detailed or as simple as you like, because if you think about different styles of wallpaper, you know, the years where we all had wallpaper, now it's, you know, a bit of a rarity to see wallpaper, but wallpaper can either have very, very detailed images on it, or it can have really simple painterly looking images, and that's what I'm sort of going to go for here, that it's a little bit more relaxed and looser in the interpretation, that they're not actually meant to look like real roses. And that's how I'm going to approach that. So next I might do a little bit on the cat. I'm not sure what sort of cat I want to make it, whether I want it to look like a real cat or not. I think I'll just make it up as I go along. So I'm going to use the oatmeal to start with, and I'm going to use a really light base of the oatmeal. Because I just feel like I'm going to make the cat blend in with the colours around, not actually be like a real cat, because you know this is a colouring book, we can do whatever we want with it. You want to make it look like a real breed of cat, you can. You don't have to. So again, just really roughly and lightly, just getting a feel for the colour more than detail at this stage, or blending. And then I'm thinking I'd like a darker brown, and I'm going to use, I'm actually going to use dark brown. This is called dark brown. So dark brown and oatmeal to start with. And then I'm going to just start going over the lines that Kanoko's put there for us to suggest the direction of the fur. And then where the head ends and it's sort of overlapping the body, and here where there is a ribbon around the neck, just going to put that suggestion of dark brown in as a shadow to start with, so that we get a sense of the highlight on the edge of the face and then the body. So now I'm just doing little short strokes in the same direction as what Kanoko's drawn the details down there for us. And I'm going to treat that like it's the markings on the cat. Now I don't try to draw every single hair or bit of fur in when I'm doing animals. I tend to take the approach where I just change the tone of the colours from light and dark to suggest things, rather than actually be highly detailed. That's not my usual approach. And then what I do is here and there I'll put these little strokes just to describe the direction of the fur, but I'm not trying to draw every little tiny bit of fur in. And then I'm going to use that oatmeal to blend it off the hard edges and start to burnish it a little bit. So again, that's how I start to work up the depth of colour. And I need something kind of in between those two, so I'm going to use light brown, just get this sharpened. So where I feel like I just want that little bit of blending between the light to the dark, and this is just out of my head, of course. I'm not looking at any reference image here, and I'm not trying to make it look like a real cat. So again, I'm not pressing very hard, and I'm just doing a scribbling motion, but trying to sort of follow the direction that Kanoko suggested to us there with the strokes of the fur. I may have missed a petal there. So when you're sure where your colours are and that you're happy with the placement, then you can think about starting to come in a little bit firmer with the strokes and a bit darker, and strengthening up some of that colour. So you're starting to get some of that really strong contrast going on. And then I'll just keep blending that out. With the oatmeal. And I slipped with my pencil there. I've got a bit of a pencil stroke where it shouldn't be. So I'm just going to use a little battery eraser there. And I've managed to take some blue off. That was a bit careless, but anyway, here we go. I'll just use a bit of light blue to touch that back up. Do that. And blend that in a bit better. And again, I just keep working at it, you know, more and more layers. And if there's anything I really hate, I get an eraser and lighten it off and then go back and do a bit more work with it. Okay, so I'm leaving my colours out here so that I can finish it off later when I'm on my own. So I want to give the cat green eyes, and I'd like them to be quite vibrant. So this is called palm leaf. So I'm going to do the area around the pupil in that colour palm leaf, and then I'm using jade green to come more to the outer edge. And then that ties in with what I've got in other parts. And the olive, I'm going to use that down this lower part because I feel like the light is going to be hitting from more top down. And later I'll put a little touch of, there's one little white dot there, but I'll put a little bit more white in there. And again, I'll probably work on building that up a little bit more. And then burnish it all together with the lighter colour. So that's how I would approach that. And then the ribbon around the cat's neck, there's going to be quite a lot of this colour if I do all the roses the same. And there's plenty of blue there already. I think I might do sort of more of this pink and build it up a little bit deeper. So this is medium deep rose that I've got here. So I'm just going to put a light layer of that everywhere. Oh, there's a bit of cat down here that I've missed as well. I'm just going to use the jazzberry jam just to put that in there and remind me that that is a bit of flower. And this is cat fur. And I think that that is meant to be part of the flower there as well. Let's just put that in there. Okay, so back to this one. So this is medium deep rose. And I might actually try, this might not be dark enough, but this is called cantaloupe. It's a little bit more of a salmon-y, melon sort of colour rather than pink. So I'm going to do that more towards the edges where it might be getting a bit more shadowed and darker. And I need something a bit deeper than that again. So I'm going to try salmon. It still may not be reading dark enough. So I'll get that Tickle Me Pink, which I used up here, and I'm going to do that where Kanoko has some lines here that suggest there might be some sort of shadowing. And then that's it. So I've got those 4 colours. That's Tickle Me Pink, Salmon, Cantaloupe, and Medium Deep Rose. So back to the Medium Deep Rose, which is the first colour that I laid down. And I'm going to blend those other colours and the pink together with that. Pressing harder again now because I'm burnishing it all together. Now that cantaloupe, not sure, a little bit on there. And then where I want the lightest of light highlight here, I'm actually going to use the Prismacolor white and put that on now before I lose all of that highlight, and it will remind me to stay lighter there. So now I'm really filling that tooth of the paper, and it's going to be the deepest saturated colour I can get with the pencils. So there we go. That's kind of how I address things. And then what I would start doing here is I would bring some of these colours into the cat's fur as well. So we've got a little bit of salmon. And the reason that I do that is it just helps to tie all of it together as having a relationship to each other. And it doesn't have to be a lot, but I'm using it in these areas where I've started to get darker with the colours. Maybe a little bit in the ears. And maybe even a little bit of the darker pink, so raspberry. We can start to bring little bits of that into the fur of the cat as well. And it just helps to bring all of those elements together and look like they've got more of a relationship to each other. Hopefully it's not looking too dark in here just yet, because the sun does look like it's getting pretty low. So where the dark brown can look a little bit dead, a little bit flat, that little bit of pink has just lifted it and taken it to the next level. Now, as far as I'm aware, no cats, you know, have these colours in its fur, but it still makes a really nice image, and it's not meant to be a real cat. So I'm just back to the oatmeal now, and I want it to stay quite light around the eye here, and maybe even a little bit of white showing, but I need to start blending these other colours in. So always trying to think of what direction the cat's fur would be going in, so that you try and keep it a little bit more natural. And I need the dark brown just to start getting some of this nose in. Thinking about leaving a bit of a highlight so that the light's catching it. And then I need a little bit of darker, so probably a black will be best. Okay, and then just building it up with the brown around there as well. It's got like some sort of eyebrows there. Okay, so that's starting to come to life. Sorry about this bit of a shadow here, but it's where the paper is, even though I'm using pencils, it's a little bit cockled because I've had water on this side, I think. And this is why you need a backing paper, because when you start to press harder, you can see that all of that colour is transferring. So that's why you need the backing sheet there, even when you're working with pencils. But hopefully that's starting to come to life a little bit better now, and it gives you an impression of just how you can build up these colours. You know, this is built up pretty quickly, even with the lighter colours as well. So I hope that has been a little bit more helpful to show you how, you know, I do blend with the Crayola and how I get that vibrant colour. So I will colour this off camera, and then I might just try and do a little clip to tack onto the end of this for you. So it's the next day, and I have worked on this page last night in front of the television, and you can see that I have burnished the page quite heavily with the pencils, and you do get a little bit of curling when you burnish the page or the pencil very heavily, so that will flatten out over time again. So that was the page that I used some Inktense on, of course, but it will all flatten back out. And I decided not to overwork these stripes too much because I wanted it to look a little bit like aged wallpaper, so I've kept it a little bit rough and ready in places. I didn't over blend it. And I also left a little bit of faded look along the edges as well. So that was quite deliberate. I wanted to try something a bit different there. And it doesn't always photograph well, but I'm happy with the way that it looks in real life. And I just used a combination of all the different colours I'd used on the background here and a little bit of tan just to do a border around there. So it kind of looks like there might be a frame or a picture on a wallpapered wall, or at least that's what I'm hoping. I could have put some shadows under here, of course, but I didn't want to go to all that trouble. So that is how it ended up. So I'll just show you a close-up look at some of the details. So there is a little dark patch here, and I think that corresponds to some bleed through that had happened on that page. So I think that's what that is. Just trying to get this light right for you to be able to see some of these details. So as you can see, I don't draw all the bits of fur in. I do a few little lines here and there, but I tend to blend most of it and just let the changing tone and colour do all of the suggestion of what is actually going on. And to finish off, I could potentially use a white gel pen or some sort of acrylic pen. I've got a Montmartre acrylic pen here, and I could soften up some of these darker lines here to make it look like there are some white hairs, you know, coming out of the ears or whatever, and just soften that off with a fingertip or a Q-tip, something like that. And I might just put a little dot to try and indicate the light might be hitting those eyes. And that would be all I do. I don't tend to go into too much detail with the white pens myself, because it's just not something that I ever tend to get looking natural. So I try and achieve as much as I can with the pencil or whatever I'm using, and limit the embellishments, because it's just not my thing. I haven't mastered it, and I'm not entirely happy with the look of some of it, so I would probably just leave it at that, and that's how my page would end up, and I'm really happy with that. I'm glad I've chosen those colours. I really like the way the ribbon turned out. It's worked well with all the flowers, and I'm really happy with that colour scheme with the browns as well, with the cat. I just like it. It's pleasing to me. So thank you for watching. I really do appreciate you being with me. If you've got any questions, pop them into the comments box and I'll do my best to answer them for you. And if you have any requests that you would like me to colour with Crayola in any other book, if I do have the book, I'll see what I can do for you. So thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye now. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please consider subscribing and hitting the notification bell. That way you won't miss out on the next one.